My name's Michael Reeves. I'm 35 years old, born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I work as a mechanic, have been since I was about 21. I got my own little shop out on the east side, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills and keeps my hands busy. I've been married to my wife Lena for nearly 10 years now. She's a nurse, so she's the smart one between us. We live in a modest two-bedroom house just outside the city with our two dogs, Ellie and Moose. I wouldn't call myself religious, not exactly. Lena goes to church every Sunday, and I've always supported that, but I guess I've always been more logical. Fixing cars is straightforward. If something's broken, you figure it out, replace it, tighten a few bolts. Simple. Life doesn't work like that. It started with this weird ache in my chest. At first, I thought I pulled a muscle lifting a transmission at work. It was dull, but steady like a tight grip that wouldn't let go. Over the next couple days, it started creeping into my back and up into my neck. I still didn't think much of it. Took some Tylenol, stretched it out. Business was picking up, and I didn't have time to deal with it. Then one Thursday afternoon, I was working under a Chevy Silverado, trying to knock loose a rusted bolt, and I felt this sharp, stabbing pain, like lightning through my ribs. I dropped the wrench. My vision went blurry for a second. I had to sit down on the shop floor. Lena came to pick me up from work that day, and she took one look at me and said, "You're pale, Mike. You're sweating and your eyes look off." I tried brushing her off, told her it was just a long day, maybe dehydration. She wasn't having it. Next thing I knew, she was driving me straight to the ER. She's not dramatic by nature, but that day she had this urgency in her tone I hadn't heard before. That scared me more than the pain did. At the hospital, they ran a few tests, EKG, blood work, CT scan. It felt like a blur. A lot of waiting. A lot of nurses looking at monitors and whispering things to each other. Lena was pacing in the corner, arms crossed, biting the edge of her thumbnail like she always does when she's nervous. Then Dr. Harris walked in. Tall guy, late 40s maybe, kind eyes, but serious. He didn't waste time. "Michael," he said, "we found something concerning. You have a thoracic aortic aneurysm. It's large, and from what we can tell, it's under serious pressure. If it ruptures..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Lena asked what the plan was, and he told us they were moving me to the ICU immediately. Surgery was possible, but risky, and they had to monitor me overnight. He paused for a moment, then said the words that I'll never forget. "You should prepare for the worst." That moment hit like a sledgehammer. Not because I was scared, but it was the look on Lena's face. She didn't cry. She just stood there frozen. Her mouth slightly open, her eyes locked on the doctor like she didn't even hear him. I tried to speak, to crack a joke like I usually do when things get tense, but nothing came out. My throat was dry. My chest hurt more now, not physically, something else. Like something just shifted inside me. They wheeled me up to the ICU. The lights were dim, and the air was cold. Machines beeped constantly. Nurses came and went. I could see Lena through the glass, sitting in the hallway, her hands clasped, her head down. I didn't know if she was praying or just trying not to fall apart. Maybe both. I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles, listening to the machines, and for the first time in a long time, I was scared, really scared. I wasn't ready to die. Not like this. Not in a hospital bed, surrounded by strangers. At some point, I closed my eyes. I could still feel that pressure in my chest, like time was ticking. And somewhere in the silence of that night, something started shifting, not outside me, but inside. I didn't understand it then, but I would. I don't remember falling asleep that night. It wasn't real sleep anyway. More like floating in and out of consciousness. Nurses came in every hour to check vitals, adjust the floor, whisper something to each other. Every time I opened my eyes, the ceiling was still there, and the damn monitor still beeping. That beep became my soundtrack. Around 2 a.m., the pain in my chest shifted. It wasn't sharper, just heavier, like something was sitting on top of me, pushing down. I reached for the call button, but I didn't press it. Something in me said, just breathe, just stay calm. Outside the glass wall of my room, I could see Lena. She was still there, sitting on that tiny hospital bench, her sweatshirt wrapped tight around her, her knees pulled up to her chest. She looked exhausted, but she hadn't left. Not for a minute. And I knew her. If she was staying, It meant she didn't want to get that call in the middle of the night. She wanted to be there just in case. A nurse came in quietly. Her name was Jordan. She adjusted my line and looked at the monitor. I could see something flash across her face, like hesitation. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Try to rest," she said gently, and tucked the blanket in around me. "The cardiologist will check on you first thing." After she left, I closed my eyes again. That's when it happened. At first, it felt like a dream, but clearer, deeper. Like I was somewhere else. I wasn't in the hospital bed anymore. I was standing in a field, tall golden grass all around me. The sky was warm, not too bright, just glowing. And there was a figure standing ahead of me, not moving, just watching me. He didn't say anything, but I felt it deep in my chest, a peace I hadn't known before. I wanted to cry, not because I was scared, but because for the first time since I was told I might not survive the night, I wasn't afraid. And then, just before everything faded back to the real world, I heard a voice. Calm, strong. It's not your time. I opened my eyes with a start. It was still dark. The monitor was still beeping. I was still alive. The pressure in my chest, gone. Not completely, but noticeably different. Like something had lifted. A few minutes later, Lena walked into the room quietly. She thought I was asleep. I turned my head slowly and said, "You're still here." She came to the side of the bed and put her hand on mine. Her eyes were tired, but she smiled. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. I looked at her and said, "I think I saw something. Or someone. I don't know how to explain it." Lena's eyes filled with tears instantly, but she didn't cry. She just nodded like she understood. Then she said, "I called Pastor Greg." That surprised me a little. Not because I didn't want him there, but because Lena had never pushed her faith on me. It was always her thing. Her safe space. But she had reached out. She believed in something bigger than this hospital and its machines. "He's coming in the morning," she said. "He said he'd be here early." I nodded. For once, I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't crack a joke. I just said good. The morning came fast. The shift changed. Dr. Harris came in a little after 8. He checked the monitor, reviewed the chart, then called for another CT scan. Said he wanted to compare the results. I was wheeled down the hall. This time, the ride felt different. I wasn't gripping the bed rails. I wasn't expecting the worst. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I didn't feel like I was on my way out anymore. After the scan, I was taken back to my room. Lena was there, talking to a man I hadn't seen before. Pastor Greg. He wasn't what I expected. He was in his 50s, jeans, and a plain black button-down, with a kind smile and calm voice. When he turned to me, I half expected him to start preaching, but he didn't. He just said, "Hey, Michael, mind if I sit for a bit?" I shrugged. "Be my guest." We talked. About life. About fear. About the unknown. He didn't push scripture in my face or ask if I'd accepted Jesus. He just listened. Then he said something that hit me like a wrench to the chest. "You're still here for a reason. Sometimes that reason is just the next person who needs to hear your story." I didn't say anything at first. I looked at Lena, and she nodded, tears finally falling. Before he left, Pastor Greg asked if he could pray. I agreed. He placed one hand gently on my shoulder. Lena held the other. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. I felt it, like a locked door in my chest finally creaked open. Just a little, but enough. Right after he left, Dr. Harris returned. He had my new CT results. He pulled up a chair and said, "Michael, I want to show you something." He held the scans side by side, the one from last night and the one from this morning. Even I could tell the aneurysm was smaller. "It's not gone," he said, "but it's reduced. Significantly. We're holding off on surgery for now." Lena gasped. I just stared. He went on. "This doesn't happen. Not overnight. But I've learned not to argue when things don't follow the books." He patted my arm and stood up. "Keep resting. Let's see what tomorrow brings." After he left, I sat in silence. The machines kept beeping. The 4 kept dripping. But inside, everything had changed. The next morning started like any other in the ICU. Bright lights, soft voices, the smell of antiseptic and hospital breakfast trays rolling by. But for me, it didn't feel like just another day. It felt like a second chance. I wasn't hooked up to as many machines now. My vitals had stabilized overnight. The blood pressure monitor that used to beep every couple of minutes was finally quiet. Dr. Harris came in early, holding his usual clipboard, but this time he had a different look on his face. He wasn't rushing. He didn't seem tired. If anything, he looked curious. "Morning, Michael," he said, pulling up a chair beside my bed. "How are you feeling?" I sat up slowly. "Better. No pressure in my chest. Just lightheaded." "That's normal," he said, "considering everything your body's been through." He glanced down at the chart again, then looked me in the eyes. "The aneurysm. We reviewed the imaging 3 times. It's still there, but it's significantly smaller. And there's no sign of imminent rupture." I raised an eyebrow. "So, I'm not dying?" He chuckled. "Not today." Lena stood behind him, her hand over her mouth. She'd been holding her breath since he walked in. Now she exhaled and wiped her eyes without saying a word. "But I don't understand," I said. "I didn't get surgery. I didn't even get treatment, really. I was just lying here." Dr. Harris nodded. "Sometimes the body responds in ways we can't explain. But it's rare. Very rare." Then he stood up, hesitating just a second. "Keep resting. We'll run more tests tomorrow, but things are looking much better." As he walked out, I looked over at Lena. She was still frozen in place, her eyes wide, her hand still over her mouth. I said, "What just happened?" She walked to the bed, sat down, and held my hand tightly. "You were given back to me," she whispered. I didn't have words. All I could do was sit there, holding her hand, looking out the hospital window at a cloudy sky that felt a little brighter than usual. Around noon, Pastor Greg came back. This time, he didn't knock. Just walked in with a gentle smile and a coffee in his hand. "I heard the news," he said. "Dr. Harris called me." "He called you?" I asked, surprised. Greg nodded. "He said he doesn't usually do this, but he wanted me to know. He said he still doesn't believe in miracles, but this made him pause." He sat down and sipped his coffee. "Want to talk?" I did. I didn't know where to begin, but I did. "I had this dream," I told him. It felt like more than a dream. There was a field and a figure standing there. He didn't speak, but I felt something. Then I heard a voice. "It's not your time." I thought I imagined it, but now, I don't know. Greg leaned forward. "A lot of people experience that, Mike, especially when they're close to the edge. Some call it the presence of God. Some say it's your spirit understanding what your body's going through. But I believe when heaven speaks, the heart recognizes it." I was quiet for a minute. Then I said, "I think I'm ready." He smiled. "Ready for what?" "To stop running. To stop pretending like I've got it all under control. I don't. I never did." That moment wasn't flashy. There were no doves flying overhead or beams of light shining through the ceiling. It was just me in a hospital bed, holding hands with a man I'd just met a day ago, saying out loud something I hadn't said in years. "I believe," I whispered. Greg nodded slowly. "That's all it takes." Lena was crying again, sitting in the chair next to me, squeezing my hand so hard I thought it might break. But I didn't tell her to stop. I didn't want her to. That evening, one of the ICU nurses, Jordan, the one from the night I almost didn't make it, came in to check my vitals. She looked at the monitor, then at me, then smiled. "You look a lot better," she said. I smiled back. "Feel a lot better." She lingered for a second. "You know, I've worked here for 6 years. I've seen a lot of patients come through this unit, but I've never seen someone rebound like that without intervention. Not like this." I looked at her. "You think it's a mistake?" She shook her head. "No, I think some things aren't meant to be explained." After she left, Lena and I sat in silence. She read her devotional book in the chair beside me, and I just watched the sun setting through the blinds. The sky was orange and purple, the kind of colors you don't get every day. I thought about everything that had happened over the last 48 hours. From the wrench dropping in the garage, to the ICU bed, to that voice in the field. And I realized I'd spent my whole life looking for logic when maybe, just maybe, faith wasn't about logic at all. It was about trust. A week later, I walked out of the hospital under my own power. No wheelchair, no oxygen tank, no medical escort. Just me, Lena by my side, and a discharge paper folded neatly in my back pocket. The sky felt huge that day. The air tasted different. Everything was louder, sharper, like someone had hit a reset button on the world, and I was walking into it with new eyes. Dr. Harris had come to see me one last time before I left. He handed me a final copy of the scans and said, "I'll be honest. I've seen a lot in my career, but your case, it's not something I can explain medically. The aneurysm is still there, but stable, and the inflammation is nearly gone." He paused, then added, "Some of us would call it spontaneous regression. Others," he glanced at Lena, "might say it was something bigger." He shook my hand, smiled briefly, and told me to take it easy. That was the last time I saw him. When we got home, Lena cried quietly in the driveway. I stood there, just watching her, key still in my hand. Our dogs barked from inside, excited and clueless. I opened the door and knelt down to hug them, my chest still sore, but full. Full in a way I hadn't felt in years. I didn't go back to work right away. I wanted to believe me. I missed the smell of grease, the sound of tools clanking, the rhythm of solving mechanical problems. But something in me told me to slow down. And for once, I listened. I spent that first week home, just sitting on the back porch with a cup of coffee, watching Lena read, answering texts from friends who heard I'd been in the ICU. I didn't give them details. I just said, "I'm okay now. God pulled me through." Some responded with, "Glad you're better." Some ignored the God part. But one message stood out. It was from a friend I hadn't talked to in years. Jake. We used to work together before I opened my shop. His message read, "Saw your story. My dad's in the hospital. They're saying it's the end. I don't know if I believe anymore. But if you've got something to say, I'm listening." I stared at that message for a long time. And then I wrote back, "Let's talk." That one conversation turned into a dozen, then into others. Then, one day, Pastor Greg invited me to speak at a men's group. Nothing fancy, just 10 or 12 guys in the back room of the church. I was nervous. I didn't know what to say, but I told them the truth about the pain that wouldn't go away. The night the doctors told Lena to prepare for the worst. The dream, the voice, the healing no one could explain, the shift inside me. I told them I didn't understand all of it. I still don't. I'm not a theologian. I'm just a man who got more time than he deserved. After that meeting, one guy came up to me, shook my hand, and said, "I needed to hear that today." And that's when it hit me. Maybe the point wasn't the miracle itself. Maybe the point was what I do with it after. I started going to church with Lena every Sunday. Not just sitting in the back row, arms crossed, waiting for the service to end. I listened. I prayed. Sometimes quietly. Sometimes out loud. I didn't become some overnight preacher or anything like that. I still run my garage. I still get mad when a bolt won't come loose. Still drink my coffee too hot and forget to change the oil in my own car. I'm still me. But now, I see the world differently. I see people differently. Sometimes a customer walks in, and I can just tell something's wrong. I'll ask, "You good?" And sometimes they say yes. Sometimes they don't. And if the moment feels right, I'll tell them a piece of my story. Not to preach, not to convert, just to remind them, you're not alone in this. I was given a second chance, not to waste it on fear or pride, but to be present, to love Lena better, to be slower with anger and quicker with kindness, to answer that text, to return that call, to show up. A few months after I got out of the hospital, Lena and I went out to dinner. First real night out since everything happened. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table, held my hand, and said, "I didn't think I'd get to sit across from you again." I just looked at her, trying to keep it together, and said, "I didn't think I'd get to wake up again." She smiled. "So what do we do now?" And I said, "Whatever he wants us to do." So that's what I'm doing. Whatever he wants me to do. Some days that's fixing a car. Some days it's listening to someone who just needs to talk. And some days it's just being quiet long enough to hear something bigger than myself. I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I know this much. When the doctors said, "Prepare for the worst," God had other plans. I'm still here, and I know exactly why.